Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to St. Teresa Church of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish. We're very honored to have this. It's a three-way celebration. It's a Eucharistic revival. It's also the exhibit, which is quite exciting, and also a kind of celebration too of the canonization of Carlo Acutis. So there's a lot that's packed into all this, and so our gathering here today is very brief. It's just really to mark the opening of this whole experience. It will go on for more than a week, and there is right afterwards, in just a few minutes, there's reception in the chapel that's going through those doors and to the right, and then the exhibit, of course, is downstairs. When I was in the seminary 200 or 300 years ago, I was at one point I was doing research for a paper that I had to do, and I stumbled upon a treatise, an essay, I guess, that had been written centuries ago, and it was asking a question, and the question was, could Jesus in the monstrance see the congregation? I was captivated by the question, which sounded rather odd, I guess, because if Jesus can see the congregation no matter where he is, and I was wondering what difference did it make? But the answer. So I read the treatise just because I was captivated by the question. And the answer that the writer came up with, I can't remember the name of the writer, maybe it's better that I don't, but the answer that he came up with was, yes, Jesus could see the congregation, but he couldn't hear them. So we laugh at this exaggerated view of the humanity of Jesus, seeing and hearing, and that he had to be in a certain place to see and hear the congregation. But it makes an interesting point, and that is that we want Jesus to be human, just as we are. And so we want to know that he can see and hear and smell and feel and listen and so forth. So we do this because we more easily want to identify with him. The two natures of Jesus, the divine and the human, give us a balance that is ideal. The divine nature enables us to see Jesus as God, with all his splendor and glory and majesty and power. And we want to see that. Human beings have this innate need to know that there is a power beyond theirs. Because if this is as powerful as we can be, that's a pretty depressing thought. So we have this need to know that there is power above ours. The human nature helps us to see Jesus, as Eucharistic prayer number 4 says, one like us in all things but sin. So we want to see Jesus in our nature, but we don't want him to sin. Even the fact that Jesus experienced temptation, though, is a comfort to us, because we can realize in those moments when we wrestle with the force of evil that continues to rise up against us no matter how hard we try. We need to know, though, that we aren't alone in that. There's a wonderful story, when you read Scripture, whether it's Old Testament or New Testament, there's lots of eating. Did you ever notice? There's lots of eating going on. So it's not surprising that Jesus would give himself to us in a meal. But in one of the Old Testament passages, this is from the first book of Kings, and this follows where Elijah had his rather unpleasant experiences with Ahab and Jezebel. And so as a result, it says here, this is from the first book of Kings, Elijah was afraid and fled for his life, going to Beersheba of Judah. He left his servant there and spent a day's journey into the desert until he came to, I should have warned my readers, he came to a broom tree. I've always liked that idea of a broom tree. It makes me picture a tree with little brooms going on. Whisk brooms, I guess. But it was called a broom tree, and he sat beneath it. He prayed for death. This is enough, O Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. He lay down and fell asleep under the broom tree. But there was an angel. An angel touched him and ordered him to get up and eat. He looked, and there at his head was a hearth cake and a jug of water. After he ate and drank, he lay down again. But the angel of the Lord came back a second time, touched him, and ordered, "Get up and eat, else the journey will be too long for you." He got up and drank and ate, and strengthened by that food, he walked 40 days and 40 nights to the mountain of God, Horeb. So, this is a good example for us. Like Elijah, we need strength for the journey. And if we don't eat, then, like the angel told Elijah, the journey will be too long for us. We have no idea how long our journey will be, or where it will take us, or how easy or painful it might be. But we need the strength provided by the presence of Jesus Christ in this sacrament of the Eucharist. When we are preparing children for their first communion, we do it very carefully, of course. And these days, we actually give them a sample beforehand to let them experience the taste and the texture of the host and the wine, if they're permitted. And we do this because we don't want any surprises for them or us when they receive their first communion. Of course, we didn't do that years ago. When I made my first communion in all right, it was 1958. We were not given that sample to experience. I guess that day they figured it wasn't a good thing to do. But I do remember then that it was a surprise, receiving Holy Communion for the first time. In those days, the hosts were even smaller. They were about the size of a dime, and they were flat. And I remember I was one of the first ones in line because, well, I'm short. And, the Sisters of Divine Providence, God bless them, they lined us up in order. Boys, of course, in one line and girls in the other. And I was always third because of my height. There was Larry Kelly, Michael Jaworski, then me. And I still remember the names. And then after me came number 4 was Michael Brown. But I have a clear memory of this, even though it was so many years ago. I have a clear memory of receiving the Eucharist, and of course I was very devout. And I went, kind of like I am now, and I went back to, and I knelt down in the pew, and I was praying, and Michael Brown came and was beside me, and he said, he leaned over and he said, "How's yours?" And I said, "It tastes like cardboard." I didn't know what I was expecting, And he said, "Mine too." So, and the reason I mention this is certainly not to be disrespectful. I mean, we were little kids. But what it comes to us in the Eucharist is not something that is meant for our taste. It is meant for our spirit. It is not meant for our emotional well-being, although the Eucharist can make us emotionally well, or it can be an offshoot of that. But the whole idea is that it is spiritual. What happens to us in the Eucharist is something we don't necessarily feel, physically or mentally or emotionally. It is a spiritual change. And we should not take that lightly. If we did, we would, if it were something other than a spiritual change, we would be receiving it for the wrong reason, I think. So the Eucharist is something that by its nature, it feeds us, but it also keeps us searching. And that's an important part of the journey, is the search. It keeps us, the Eucharist keeps us steady on that journey, knowing that Jesus is with us until, like Elijah, at last, we reach God's holy mountain, whenever that may be. Well, again, welcome. We're very pleased to have this exhibit and this experience that is going to be going on, and we think probably a number of people will be taking advantage of this. I had the school mass this morning, and I spoke to the children, and I told them about it, and I was telling them that, this all comes about through this young man, this Carlo Acutis, who was 15 years old when he died of leukemia, and I said to the kids, this young man was not much older than you are. And I think that kind of surprised them when they thought about that. And I said, he is the first and only so far millennial saint. And so that's something that I think they will certainly think of that a little differently. And the little kids preparing for their first communion next spring will probably be looking at this a little differently too. So anyway, so welcome. Thanks for being with us. And again, there's a light reception in the back, and then we can see you downstairs. Okay. Thanks very much.